Good morning, everyone. Once again, I believe all the groups are back. And so welcome again to today's sessions. We have seen it good to make a small change in our program. If you have your schedule, we were supposed to have, after the breakout rooms, we were supposed to have a short discussion about what we learned yesterday. But I'm informed that today's sessions on budget, risk management, and sustainability, as well as project evaluation and dissemination plans, are a bit heavy, and they're usually involving. And I think this is where the heart of the matter is. So we have decided that we'll start a bit about 30 minutes earlier. So we are not going to have this session of recap. We are just going to go straight into the presentations, and then so that we can manage the day-to-day. Just a minute. Yes, so let me confirm if people can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, Peter.
Yes, we can hear.
All right, thank you, Leo Sibanda. Thank you, Hesbon. So I'm glad today to introduce the first session today. We are going to have Duncan Gatoto and George Gashanga taking us through the budget, risk management, and sustainability. We started so well in day one. You learned how to identify grants and how to identify funders. And then yesterday we had a very interesting discussion on how you phrase your problem and how you also phrase your goals and objectives, as well as having an implementation plan. So now we have all those. We have identified the core. We have, got a funder, and now we have the money. So what's going to happen when you have the money? Is it how do you budget for project activities? And how do you also manage the risk? And how do you also ensure sustainability? Because we also don't want to be a briefcase organization that just gets one fund and then does something and then closes. And then the cycle continues. But we want to be an organization that can be able to sustain itself and continuing to reinvent its mission. And so, thank you, Kongola. I'm doing that right now. Okay. So yeah, we are going to hear about and to discuss about how we are going to budget and to handle risk. And I want to welcome the first speaker of the day, Duncan Gatoto. He will introduce himself and take us through his session. Welcome, Duncan. Welcome, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peter Rock. And hello to everyone. Today I'll be taking you through budget preparation for grant application. And before I get there, maybe in brief concerning me, my name is Duncan Gatoto. I work with APHRC as finance manager. I've been working at APHRC since 2003. That was about 1.5 years since the organization was incorporated. When I joined, we were just a few people, about 20. I was only accountant. Currently, we are about 10 of us in accounting, just to just say how we've grown since I joined. Also, before then, I used to work as an auditor with Deloitte and Touch for close to 4 years. So APHRC has been my employer for much of my life. And I believe I've learned one or two things that I can share with you today. So I'll go ahead and project my slides. I hope I'm being heard clearly.
Yes.
Okay, so let me get back into the business of the day. So the objectives we have today, after my presentation, is that we should be able to define what a grant proposal budget is, identify its components, that is number of units and rate. I'll get into that. Identify methods used to determine costs and units. Describe how the project effort will continue after the grant ends. And finally, be able to prepare a budget for a grant application. So the outline of my presentation is first to define what a proposal budget is, and then the components of the grant proposal budget and how these components are budgeted for. I'll get a bit into indirect cost issues and other budgetary considerations, and then a bit of value for money considerations as you work on a budget. For history purpose, this is just an extract from our financial audited accounts for the period the APHRC has been in existence. We began in 2001 as an independent operation, where our budget was about $1 million. Now we have a budget of about $20 million for the year 2021. We've been able to raise even more than this. Like last year, our budget was actually 24 million. But because of COVID, our burn rate was quite low. We are hoping that this dip will again revert as we go on. So this is really a presentation of the operational income and the operational expenditure. And just maybe to mention about 2020, this is represented by close to over 100 grants. Some of them would be over $1 million. Some of them would be maybe as small as $10,000. So it's quite, they're quite valid in amounts. So I would like to start by defining what a budget is. Maybe I can put it to the floor. Someone can tell me the understanding of what a budget is to start off the discussion. Thank you. You can just unmute yourself and tell us what you think a budget is.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello, I can hear you.
Yeah, a budget is a financial plan. Hello.
Hello, I can hear you.
A budget is a financial plan which shows the incomes and the income to be generated and the money to be spent. The income to be generated and the money to be spent. Yeah.
Thanks, Jealousy. You've gotten it right.
Yeah.
A budget is simply a representation of where income is coming from and what expenses are represented by that income. And the thing with the budget is that if income exceeds expenses, we say we have a surplus. In the corporate world, you say you have a profit. Again, if expenses exceed income, you say you have a deficit. In the NGO, that's an NGO, non-governmental, you talk about a deficit, even the government. But for business, again, you say you have a loss if your expenses exceed your income. And I say deficit in this world that we are in. When income and expenditure are equal, we say we have a balanced budget. I would like to just speak about the issue of balanced budget because that's what the donor wants to see. The donor is willing to fund you to the tune of what your project. Yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just a second before you go to, yes, just before you go to what you're speaking about, I just want to make an announcement about the languages. We have 2 extra languages available. in addition to English, there's Portuguese and there's French. So if whichever language you're comfortable with, on the bottom of your screen, you will see interpretation, a button that is written interpretation. So you can go ahead and choose your preferred language. If it's English, just choose it. If it's French, choose French. If it's Portuguese, you can choose Portuguese, and then you can mute the original audio so that you can only hear the language that you have chosen. Thank you. And sorry, Duncan. Continue.
Thanks, Peter Rock, for that. So I was saying, in the where we find ourselves, it's about, we look at income versus expenses, either giving a deficit, or a surplus or a balanced budget. And the donors want to see a balanced budget, that you are asking for money that is equal to your expenses, not more, not less. When you have less, it means then you may not be able to execute the project as planned. If you have more, again, what happens to that money? Because they don't want to give you money just for the sake of giving you. They want to give money that they can be able to explain what they give you the money for. So our discussion will be more on balanced budget, and that then makes our work easier in terms of what do you consider as your income. Your income is basically your expenses, the total of your expenses. That's what you will call your income. So I would like to explain the budget in a number of ways that will make it even more clear. Again, this is with respect to the industry we are in, that a budget is an alternative way of expressing your project. Our CEO normally says that this is a favorite part of a proposal writing, because everything that you do in life, you realize it costs something. And also, as you're doing your project, you realize whatever you're doing really costs money. So it's possible for you to express what you want to do in terms of money. And I will give a simple example. If this training was to be done, say, in a room physically, you'd have certain costs that would be incurred. You'll be talking about the room. Most institutions would include that cost. For even a hotel would charge you for the room. They will charge you for the equipment. If you need to hire their own, like sound system and all that, you'll find your bill is higher. Sometimes some would charge you even the hire of LCD projectors, a laptop if you need to use theirs. Food and drinks would be another charge, and the stationery they give you. And for a profit institution, they will make sure that they are able to recover more than the cost and therefore make a profit. So it's possible to put a meeting. That meeting, if it's going to take 1 day or 5 days, you're able to express it in terms of figures. But in the narrative, you'll be talking about a meeting. And if you're doing even a 10 million say a project worth $100 million, it's possible for you to be able to express those activities in terms of money. And that's what the donor wants. So another way you can talk about a budget is that it's a credibility statement. The donor wants to see from it, the donor is able to read a lot of how you've gone about it. And of course, a donor is driven by value for money. They want to be able to maximize value with the money they're giving you. That's why when they're looking at a competitive bid, they're looking at your technical capability and what you're able to do for the money that you're asking. So the person to win the funds will be the person who shows the maximum value for the same amount of money. So if you do a budget that has figures that are inflated, a donor will be reading that you are a wasteful person. Again, if you miss items, the donor will be reading this person did not plan very well. They didn't put a lot of thought into the project. So these are things that you are telling the donor. I know even in your work engagements and all that, you can read many things. Someone sends you a document, you can tell this person just did this at the last minute, this person took their time. The same message can be read from the budget. And I want to just say this to emphasize the importance of putting time into this. And one thing I've noticed as I worked with APHRC is that donors are people in most cases who have worked where you worked. We've had staff who've left us and joined some of the donor organizations, including the bigger ones, Gates Foundation. We have staff who've left us, joined the IDRC, so they know what's happening on the ground. So when you're sending your budget, they are able to read and tell. I've been there. I know what it involves to do this work, and this person has missed this and this and this. So you're not talking to a person who is oblivious of what you are doing. They actually have a lot of experience. We've seen even in government officials, politicians taking up jobs with the UN and such bodies. So when they go there and you are writing a proposal to them, they've done what you've done and can be able to critique because they've been there. Yeah, so I can't overemphasize the importance of that. A budget informs program, and also program informs the budget. I want to take an example of this. The Kenyan government has been speaking about the affordable housing and plans towards this. And there are two ways the government can look at this. They can decide to ascertain how many houses are required and now compute how much that would cost and raise that money. That's one way, where the program you want to do dictates how much money is required. The other way is setting aside a certain amount of money and trying to do what that money is able to do. So there are two ways, and you'll meet donors who have both approaches. Some will tell you, we have $1 million, come up with an idea. We have an idea towards this kind of thing that you're also interested in. Can you send us a budget with a maximum of $1 million? The others will tell you, you agree on the idea, and then you're asked to calculate, to send a budget of what that idea would cost. So those are both scenarios where you know the money, and the other part you don't know the money, but you get the money from the activities. Another thing about the budget, a budget speaks about what kind of a donor you are approaching. So if it's a donor who funds political activities, there are certain things you may not put in that budget because they want to see. They want to look at the budget and see it's speaking about political activity. If it's a donor who's funding dissemination, they want to see cost to that end. Again, donors put different weights to different things. If a donor is more on, say, dissemination, they want to see your budget is also showing more dissemination activities than, say, staff or maybe programmatic activities. If a donor also wants to fund research or this kind of research, you'll find they will be expecting maybe more of staff time, and your budget should be able to express that. And donors will give you guidelines that don't exceed 10-20% where staffing is concerned, and you are supposed to follow those directions. Meaning then that by the time you finish the budget, a donor can look at it and see this budget actually speaks to what we are interested in. And lastly, the budget should also speak about what you do. You are not going to change what you do because of what donor wants. Yes, I was here on Monday when Joseph was presenting, and he said, at times you may be forced to do certain things because of donor demands, but that will not change large what you do. If your mission is like for APHRC to generate evidence, strengthen research capacity, and engage policy to inform action on population health and well-being, we want to approach donors who fund this kind of activity. So there are donors we never approach because they do not fund this kind of thing. So as you're getting your funding, don't forget what your mission is as an institution. Okay, so I will get into major components of a budget. You'll notice the direct personnel usually constitute a very major component of the grant, depending especially on whether the activity, the grant is more skill-oriented or program-oriented. So if you're dealing with people, if the people are the ones who are producing the biggest part of the work, then personnel budget will be high. If the work that is required is more programmatic, say you are constructing infrastructure, you are constructing roads and all that, schools and such, you'll find the these other direct program costs being higher. There will be shared costs because in most cases, projects do not happen in isolation. You find an institution having a number of projects and certain things would have to be shared. Some projects also run on certain platforms, in which case then some costs may have to be shared. I'll get into that also. And then the indirect costs, I'll also get into that. And the donors basically would have the indirect costs as one of the smallest component of costs that they want to cover. And just to emphasize also, donors are interested in activity-based costing. You also call it zero-based budgeting, where you identify the activities that needs funding, and then you value those activities. This is opposed to other types of budgeting. The main other kind of budgeting is what you call incremental budgeting, where you look at what you did last year. We spent, say, $1 million towards staff time. So this year, because of inflation, it was 6%. Let's make it maybe 10% more. So you have $1.1 million for staff budget. The problem with that one is that it doesn't say much. You have to go to last year's activities to be able to explain what is happening in the current year. But when you're doing an activity-based budget, you just need to look at the activities you set out to do. Should there be anything you can be able to explain, maybe this activity need to happen, or we were able to do more activities than we had set out. And that's why the donors prefer activity-based budgeting. It's also possible for you to engage them should there be a problem. Say it's a meeting, you're set out to invite 100 people, and then you end up needing 200. You can engage them and tell them, you can see the budget had 100, now we need 200, and they will understand where you're coming from. But if you just put a figure like a meeting worth $100,000, then you go back to them and tell them now the number has doubled. They may not get it well because you didn't show what the 100,000 was made up of. That's why now the activity-based budgeting becomes more preferred. And there are many other benefits of activity-based budgeting. Where accounting is concerned and you have to approve spending, you'll be looking at what was budgeted, and if something was not budgeted, then you would be able to know how to address such a thing. So getting into personnel budgeting.
I know it has got to do with the reservations. We are working on that. I'll get back to you, please.
Okay. I think someone has unmuted themselves. Getting into direct personnel costs, I will explain how you go about getting this. How do you budget for personnel? There are two ways. You can either establish a position costs, or two, you can have specific costs for specific staff. Now, in most institutions, you'll find it's possible to classify positions. In the government, you can, like in Kenya, you can have grades, and this grade pays from this much to this much. If you are going to be using people of this grade, then you can budget at that grade because you know how much they cost you. Some donors would want to get specific stuff, like USAID would want you to indicate who would be working on the project, and they would even ask for their pay slips, their CVs. So in such a case, you may have to work with the specific staff salaries and benefits in establishing their costs. Then just maybe to explain about the rates, how do you come up with the rates? A rate for a staff would include the basic pay and the benefits, which you would have terms like fringe and allowances explaining them. So when you are budgeting for staff time, it will be very important that you realize that the cost of a staff is not just the payslip amount. The other cost that an institution has to incur for purposes of keeping that staff, and I'll get into an example of what this cost would be. So again, you can do the same even with positions, where you look at all the staff in a certain position and you get an average, and then say this position, the average cost of a staff in this position is this much. Just to emphasize, it's important to have the rates so that if there's a call, you have these figures at your fingertips. At APHRC, what we do before the end of the year, we would have established the rate for every position, every staff, based on what we know about them in terms of their pay slip, their basic pay, and what benefits they're entitled to. That way, whenever we have a call, the person doing the grant will just establish how many positions they want or what level, and then we'll be able to put figures to it because we have the figures already. The other thing that you need to establish with the personnel is the level of effort. Just to maybe summarize something about budgeting. Budgeting has two components. It doesn't matter whether you're doing a budget of $10,000, $100, or $1 billion. It has two components. The components are the rates and the units. So in establishing all these figures, you should always know that you should always think about the rate and the units, and you see how it plays out in my future slides. So where personnel costs are concerned, you'll be thinking about rates, and the second thing is the level of effort. Yes, I need this staff. Maybe I need, say, a director of finance, but how much of this person do I need in this grant? Is what is explained by the level of effort. And in the next slide, I'll show how that is determined. So also, you need to make allowances of other things that staff do. Yes, you may need them for 10 days or for 100 days in the project. But in those 100 days, this staff may be called upon to other things. So in establishing their time, you may not just leave it at 100. You may want to put more to cover other things that the staff may be called upon to do. Say like attending meetings that are not just the project meetings. You attend to what they maybe motivational activities, team building activities, and such. So how do you determine the rate? I said the rate is made up of the basic pay and the benefits. I'm given just an example here. I'm assuming someone earns $54,000 a year in basic pay. Then this person is entitled to several benefits. We have the medical. We have medical. At APHRC, what we do is that we'll use the size of your family. So if you're single, we'll be using a rate that is equivalent to the rate that the service provider is giving us for a single person. If you have, say, 4 dependents, we'll also look at what the service provider is charging us for that, because these are costs you establish even before the beginning of the year. Medical covers are given in advance. So we'll have this for every staff and use it to establish, say, this particular staff's medical expense. Also, the pension, you'll have a policy of how pension is determined. Like in this case, I'm assuming it's 10% of the basic. That's 5,400. The other benefits like this group personal accident in Kenya, you're familiar with WIBA, that would be able to be covered by GPA. There's also group life assurance. That's also something else that employers give. And these are benefits that would really benefit the staff beneficiaries in case of an accident or death, or even the staff in case of incapacitation. Gratuity, in case it applies, some institution would give, say, like a 3-year contract, and after that period, you're given an amount. Every end of that contract, you get an amount. So it's good to make sure that all those costs are captured in your day-to-day operations. Professional membership, if it applies, at APHRC, we pay for staff membership up to 2 associations that they are members of. So to us, that is a personal cost that needs to be recovered when we think about such a staff in relation to their time spent on a project. Some institution would have education allowance. I'm assuming here, maybe it is a person with 4 children and they're entitled to $500 a year. So that cost needs to be captured. Then if there's housing, and this is the year amount, home leave, in case you have expertise and they have to be paid for air tickets to go home, maybe every year or every 2 years. Sometimes it's not just maybe out of the country. If someone may be working in a place like Akuma and they need to travel back home every 2 weeks, every 3 months or so. So those costs, again, are personal and needs to be captured. So in this example, we are saying this staff benefit is 18,000. 18,000 plus the basic pay gives us 72,000 as this particular staff's annual cost. Now, when you're doing a grant application, it's possible for you to now know how to cost a person. You establish the number of days, effective days that the staff works, then divide it by, you take the cost divided by the number of days, and you get a daily rate. So if a donor, maybe a donor template requires that you give a monthly rate, then you should, from the 72,000, you should be able to divide that by 12 to get 6,000. If they want a weekly rate, you're able to get the 6,000 divided by 4. If some of them want a benefit rate, so you can take the basic pay and add the basic benefit rate, which is in this case 33.3%. That is 18,000 divided by 54. Now with this one, then you can see how easy it will be. Every time this stuff is required in a grant proposal, when you give this rate, you are sure you've covered all the costs that that staff needs to be covered where that staff is concerned. Before I go far, I would like to also talk about why the daily rate is 220 here. In a year, we have 365 days. So when you are thinking about how many days you need of a staff, it's important that you realize no staff will be available for all those 365 days. There are days the staff will need to rest for weekends, which are 52 times 2 days, so that's 104 days. Those are not to be considered. There are public holidays. There are leave days that staff needs to go on leave. There are also other days like compassionate leave, maternity, paternity. So how do you cost a staff in a way that you are not worried about those things, that someone is on leave for a whole month and expecting a salary and they are not charging a project? How would you be able to pay for such a person? So what APHRC has done is we've taken 365 days, we've removed the 104 days of weekends, we've removed the 24 days of annual leave, and then we removed about 10 days of public holidays. And on top of that, we've reduced by about an additional 5 to 6 days to cover maternity and paternity per person. The challenge with paternity and maternity and compassionate leave and study leave, you may not know these costs, these days in advance. So what we've done is that we look at history, last year, how many days in total were taken of these other leaves, study, maternity, paternity, compassionate, and then you divide by the number of staff. So you can be able to tell on average 6 days or 5 days are taken to cover these other leaves. So what this does, it ends up giving you a lower denominator. You're dividing 72,000, instead of dividing it with 365 days, you're dividing it with 220, which gives you a higher rate. So should this staff take leave, go on maternity or paternity, you are not worried, because every staff, there's that component that has been incorporated in the rate that will cover for such. The idea is to be as reasonable and as accurate as possible, because at the end of the day, if you're doing a grant and the donor wants you to report on it and give supporting documentation, if you are not reasonable, you'll find maybe you have a lot of money remaining, which you have to pay back, or you have a deficit, which you may have to dig into your own pocket to cover. Then I said every budget item has a component of rate and units. So for staff, I mentioned about level of effort. How do you establish level of effort? You remember we are doing budgets on activity based. We are doing an activity-based budget. So you have to break down this staff involvement in the project to the activities that are required of them. Now, these are very simplistic example. I'm assuming this project just has two main activities. One is to write a report. Another one is to disseminate the report. And I need three staff. That is the TM, maybe this is Timothy, SN, maybe this is Susan, and RW, maybe this is Ruth. And in the first activity of writing the report, we have activities involved in writing a report, which will be validating the data, doing data analysis, outlining the report, drafting the report, and internal review. Now, in terms of validating the data, we are saying Timothy needs 3 days, Susan needs 1 day. In data analysis, we just have Timothy, who is a data analyst, spending 10 days. To outline the report, we need 0.5 of Timothy, 0.5 of Susan, and 0.5 of Ruth. So for the entire activity of writing the report, we need 23 days, 23.5 days of Timothy, 6.5 days of Susan, and 3.5 days of Ruth. Then we look at the other activity, which is dissemination. In disseminating, you have to prepare for the dissemination. So for the three staff, we have, again, the time they need. If you are traveling internationally to do the presentation, those are days that, of course, at the end of the month, you need to pay the people. So those days you need to cost. And then the lesson learned. After the dissemination, you want to maybe do a report on the dissemination. And in this case, we just had two staff traveling. These are Timothy and Susan. And in total, we have 37.5 days required of TM and 19.5 required of Susan and 4 days required of Ruth. So we know about the daily rate, which is 327 for this particular staff. So it's easy for you to cost this person's time and get, if this is all the personnel you need, you'll just get this person's rate multiplied by 37, you get this person's rate multiplied by 19.5 and RW, and then you are done. If you're doing a $1 million project, you have to go to this level of detail again. But you notice some of these activities you do, you don't keep on changing your mission. It's possible for you to establish all the activities that you've been involved in the office. And so whenever you're doing a budget, you just pick on the activities that you'll be involved and then put the number of days, and that is done. It's not like you'll be reinventing the wheel every time. So I just want to speak again about the challenges of estimating number of effort. I mentioned about the number of days. You have to ensure that you consider a staff will go away on weekends we'll take holidays, we'll take vacation days, we take other leave days that are the leave days and other leave days that are they're entitled to. So how do you deal with this? By reducing the denominator. Instead of the 365 days in the year, you can reduce it to the level where you can be able to justify to a donor. You see, like when you're talking about leave days and they ask you, why are you reducing the days by 24? It's possible for you to give them the staff contract, the HR manual, to just show that staff are entitled to those days. So it is not that you work out this day, you remove these days and not be able to justify. Whatever you do in the when you're doing a budget, you should be able to give your basis for what you're doing there. Any calculations that you're doing. I also mentioned about auxiliary activities. Yes, a staff, you may need a staff 100% of their time, but it's possible that it's true that this staff will be required for other activities in the office. It could be a management activity like team building, could be meetings. Maybe if a meetings happening every week. If you add all those days to the end of the year, there'll be a number of days really. So what if the reality of the matter is that you need the staff 100%, and then when you remove these days, you realize that one staff is not enough. Maybe it means you should have 1.5 unit of a staff, or you should have 2 staff to be able to sort the issue of other activities that are required of such a staff. Another thing is cutting days to fit a budget. This is common. Like in one of the approach I said, where a donor tells you, just list down the activities you need to do, cost them, and tell us how much it will cost. You go back to them and say, we think it will cost $1 million. And then the donor tells you, we have $1 million to give for this work. How do you proceed from there? There's a mistake that you could do where you say, okay, we'll try to work with $500,000, and then you do a contract, you agree on the objectives. Then when it comes to performing, you already promised you'd be able to do those activities, and you put it down in writing. Now you cannot back down and say, we will not be able. What you're supposed to do when a donor tells you that, go back to the activity-based budget and delete activities and let the donors know that these things will not happen because the grant now has gone down. If it is dissemination, maybe you had planned to have 2 people travel for dissemination. You can tell them now we'll have to work with 1 person. So let's make sure that you change those, and the donor gets to know that the budget has changed. The activities you promised to do have also changed. Or you'll find yourself like this man in the box. The other thing is you may also omit other staff. If you're doing a project that is housed in an organization, you get to realize that you need, say, like HR to do the recruitment for you. You need cleaners to make you need secretaries to type things for you. So the other staff that you may easily forget, legal office or grants office to do the agreements for you, read through them and make sure everything is captured. So yes, as you're looking at the project, you don't see this kind of people, but they are integral to the success of your project. So yeah, those are things you need to pick out. With experience, these things you just get to know that we need to budget for this and this. And then since you're doing this as a team, finance team can always pinpoint those issues if you've forgotten. Then if you're working with other people to do your projects, could be partners, you may find yourself in a situation where they also want a payment. They may be working, yes, they are drawing a salary, but the involvement in your project might mean you have to compensate them in a way. So how do you fit this in your budget? It could be as simple as maybe a per diem. It could be a simple thing as travel reimbursement. In some situation, you may need to consult and have a consultancy agreement. So when you're doing your grant, just look at what it takes, because your contract the success of your project may rely on certain people whose involvement may not be possible without having a consideration. Then, so that is on budgeting for staff. The other component I said was other direct or other program costs. In this summary, you want to go back there here. It's another big chunk of, actually this is where the work is. You find that a donor may be more interested in now the program. If they're reaching out to the poor, this is where now the chunk of money is needed. So what kind of thing, how do you budget for this kind of activities? And I'm giving an example of, say, if it is a field-based activity, what component of costs would be involved? Different institutions have different other program costs. If, for example, you're involved in construction, then your other direct costs will be now the construction materials. This is where you put the team, the architect and such. So how do you cost this? If it's a fieldwork activity, you can use pilot study. You've done it in a small scale. You've seen what kind of costs you need to incur. And now when you scale it to a bigger work, you know what kind of costs to put in. You can use historical costs because you've done it before. Then you can also use expert judgment. An example is when you're doing construction, they will tell you how much a square meter of construction costs. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can use industrial standard. Again, that you can find it in construction industry. You can find standards also. Maybe there are institutions that have done work and they know. Maybe a simplistic example, if you're talking about even hotel rates, you'll find maybe the donor has done research and they know how much it costs on average to be in a certain city. So those are standards rates that you can use. I know the government can also have rates for certain places. You don't have to, again, like reinvent the wheel. The equipment is another major item that you'll find in the indirect program costs. You may need to buy equipment or hire them. So if a donor, if the project is big enough to purchase items, then those needs to be incorporated. If it's not big enough or hiring can do, then you need to use a higher amount. Some of the donors will require you to seek approvals where equipment is concerned. Like USAID will require, if you're buying vehicles, to have their approval. Items over $5,000, you may find yourself going back to ask for approval before you purchase them. And some of them also may have restrictions on where to buy. Maybe they want you to, most donors want you to support their own. So if it's a vehicle, maybe an American donor may want you to buy American. And in that case, then you'll have to use those kind of rates or seek approvals in case you have to deviate from that. On travel and meetings, you can use standard rates. For the government, you have rates that you can employ for different places. You also you need to consider restrictions that may be there. I know, again, an example of USAID, if you are traveling to certain areas where American airlines exist, they want you to use their own airlines. So those conditions are things that you need to consider as you budget. Maybe it's an issue of what air ticket to take. If it is there are restrictions to do with economy or business tickets, then you'll budget within those considerations. There may also restrictions to where you travel to. So there are certain costs, you say you incur them in a certain country. Some donors may not may exclude them in reimbursing you, for example. So those are considerations as you do your budget. You need to be aware of such. Then materials and consumables, you can use standard costs, you can use historical costs because you've been involved in this work before. But the main thing in all this is that whatever rate you use and units, you should be able to justify to the donor. And a reasonable person should be able to see sense in how you come up with the costs. Then an example is again getting to a typical example of a program kind of a cost. I'm taking an assumption, maybe building on the first example I gave about a room. That room, you have a meeting and you need to know how much that meeting would cost. You, of course, will have participants attending a meeting, and some of them may be coming from out of the country, so you have to consider airfare. I am saying here, how do you derive these figures? You can use Kenya Airways rates, for example. You ask for quotes. How much is a ticket to go to Dakar? How much is a ticket to go to maybe Lagos? And use those kind of rates. I've summarized here. You can go deeper than this, where you're saying you have 10 people traveling, and you know the countries they're coming from. You can break it down to, if someone is coming from Uganda, you say maybe $400. If they're coming from South Africa, you say $800. If they're coming from Senegal, maybe 1,200. So all that is acceptable. But if you put 1,000 like this, I can have a supporting document to show how our averaged it to 1,000 and use that for my budgeting. Accommodation, of course, the people who are coming from out of the country have to be accommodated. And here I've used Hilton hotel rate of 200. Maybe I can be able to support. I can be able to support this from a quote I got from them, or even past documents I have in the office. And the meeting is for 5 days, so I've added an extra day. This participant may have to come maybe a day earlier or leave a day later. Some of them may not even be there for the 5 days. May just be there for the 5 days. So 6 is like an average. You have people staying for 5 days, others for 7. So 6 can do. The per diem, I'm saying this for evening meals. You can either give participants to buy for themselves, or you can pay the hotel, depending on the policies in place. Then the conference package, maybe for their meals. You notice here, there are 5 days and I have 14 participants. The consideration here, they may be Kenyans or locals who are there in the meeting, so who are not being accommodated. Again, depending on how our meeting is, if this meeting requires everyone to be accommodated, then it means then even where accommodation is concerned, it should be 14. Then airport transfers for those who are coming in from other countries. Visas, you notice I have 7 instead of 10. I'm considering some countries may be exempted from this visa requirement. Outside dinner, in maybe one of the evenings you decide, let's have dinner somewhere else, like in Kenya. Carnival is a favorite place. And other costs for running the meeting. You may want to give souvenirs. Of course, there are pens and writing materials. So I'm giving this example to just show the depth of thinking that goes into doing a budget. That you're thinking about who is coming from outside, who is a local, how many people require visas, which ones do not require visas. You're thinking about maybe a dinner, maybe a visit to the park. So this is the level of detail that is required, not just for the travel item, but for everything else. So that if you're doing $1 million budget, you're able to break it down to activities to this level on everything that is required. So it will be like field work, you'll be talking about the number of field workers, their daily rate, the number of days, and you have the total for them. If you're accommodating them, the number of days will be accommodated in the field, at what rate. If you are giving them transport, you do the same thing. That's the activity-based kind of budgeting that the donor would want to see. There are also shared costs. I said the project may not be happening in isolation. And in this sharing of costs, it's driven a lot because of overhead or indirect cost concerns. Because if this, for example, if this is happening in a university, you'll find there are costs that are involved beyond the project that this project needs to consider. There is rent to pay for the building. There are facilities, if it's a lab, is that one to be paid. If there are rooms to be shared. So how much the donor will be willing to pay towards overhead might mean you see how you can pick up some of these shared costs. The idea is to recover as much as possible. I remember when the first presenter was making his presentation, he mentioned about putting some items above the line, because the donor will be looking at a direct cost to the project and indirect cost. So if the donor is mean where indirect cost is concerned, try to see how you can be able to recover as much as possible. At the end of the day, you want to be able to have a zero or a balanced budget. It's not that you want to make money from the donor. It's just that you want to be able to cover everything that the project requires from the donor funding. So some of these shared costs are, of course, facility. It's possible for you to charge rent to a project by looking at the space the staff involved will be occupying. You can use overhead to recover rent. If the donor is generous enough, you can bill directly to the project, or you can allocate based on the sitting space or the staff time. If I give an example, if the room or the rent that an organization pays is $10,000, and all the hours that staff spend on in the office, maybe in work on work is say 100 hours, and one project utilizes 10 hours. You can say this project utilizes 10% of all the time that this office needs. This office uses. So you can use 10% of the rent. You can take 10% of the rent and bill to this project. It's like making it a proportional charge based on time spent or space spent. A project occupies 10% of the space, then you can say 10% of the rent should go to that project. As long as an allocation criteria makes sense, is reasonable, the donor should be able to understand that. The other costs, like ICT costs, you need equipment. Sometimes the equipment may not be, a project may not be able to give you like entirely a laptop, but you need a laptop to do that project. So it means there are certain ICT costs that are involved in that project that needs to be costed to the project. So some of the other examples are telephone, the softwares, also the maintenance of IT equipment. There are also antivirus softwares. So these are some of the examples that ICT costs that your project may need. And you can also allocate it the same way we allocated rent. You can also allocate it based on staff time and space. And you also have enterprise units that support your project, like vehicles, meeting rooms, equipment. They take maintenance. So you can decide, like for vehicle, you can decide to allocate using the kilometers charged to the project. For meeting rooms, like at APHRC, you have to book for a room, and at the end of the month, the finance staff will see who used these rooms, and they're able to recover a charge from the project based on the usage. The same thing with equipment. If you need, your project cannot buy its own, for data collection, we use tablets. We charge for the number of days that project will be utilizing the tablets. And also, I know in your offices, you'll also have such kind of things where you, like vehicles, of course, vehicles are shared resources, meeting rooms are shared resources, equipment on large are also shared resources. You also have admin support. You don't find that not many projects would employ their own human resources or finance team. So in case you have to share this, then the project should be able to bear a proportion of the cost. There are also things like public relation and marketing support. You may not trace this directly to your project, but you realize these offices exist to support the work of the entire institution of which the project is part of. Others will be data unit, ICT. In case there's a lot of data, maybe you're using data, you're saving data in a central place, then there is a bit of cost to it. If you have a director who oversees all the programs, you may forget this office, that at the end of the day, this person is answerable to all the programs that are being run. But where is this person drawing their compensation? The projects that under the person's office should bear a bit of it. Some of the ways to deal with this would be even to allocate a staff time for this person. Maybe the director may not be so much involved in your project, but a 1%, a 5% of their time in staff budget can take care of that. Of course, the other offices like grants management, the contract that is done by specialists in that area. So these are the costs that you may find still relevant to your project, but not directly. And you can use an allocation kind of way to do that. Like for grant management, the team can charge the time they spent working on your contract. So when they do that, it becomes a direct charge, a direct cost. If they don't do that, then maybe they're being paid from overhead, in which case the project should be able to pay a reasonable overhead to cater for such costs. Then platform costs, this may be relevant to you or not. I give an example, like in Kenya, we have an institution like AMREF or Cambridge that may be having labs. If your project is going to use those labs even for a month or for a week, there are costs to run that lab that someone is paying for. So you find that when you're doing that such a grant application, you need to think of the compensation the project can give to such a platform. And there could be ways, most of the times you find such facilities have a way of costing whoever wants to use such facilities. At APHRC, we used to have and we have this what we call Nairobi Urban Health Demographic Surveillance System, where we've been following homes for close to 20 years now, where we would collect quite a large data of quite a lot of information of the families in these homes, their livelihood. We would collect information concerning their health and quite substantial amount of data. A project can come that requires part of that data, and instead of starting from zero, they can maybe get part of the data they need from such a platform. If the project we didn't have such a platform, that project would have to start from zero. Like mapping the place, being able to sample. Maybe they have to get to connect with the leadership in the location, like the chiefs, the police, and all that. But since we've already been there for all these years, it becomes very easy for a new project to come in and work with the community, because of the history we have and the kind of data we already have in place, of the institutions in the place, maybe for the government, the clinical facilities in the place, the schools in the place, all that we already have it. So what we'll do, we'll charge such a project an amount, because that amount is to be able to run this system, because running it costs money. It really works the same way as a lab. When a project comes to a lab, the lab has been there, all the refrigerators were bought and you found them there. The staff who have to maintain the office continually. So a charge to new projects that needs to use the platform, this data collection framework, is the same way that you would charge a project that needs to use the lab. You just need to explain why you think to the donor, why you think that the project should be a part of the cost of such a framework or structure that you may already have in place. And lastly, you have indirect costs. In doing a grant budgeting, you need to understand the funder's philosophy on this. Some donors don't give you anything, so that's something that you need. Don't give any indirect costs. So you need to know that some donors are generous on indirect costs, and based on that, that should be able to help you know how to approach the indirect cost issues. The idea is to be able to justify why the indirect costs are relevant to the project, the grant that you are seeking funding for, and the donor should be able to appreciate and get committed to funding them. I'm just giving an example of some of the indirect costs that will be there. There may be management activities, like you find team building and such kind of things would fall under management activity. Also, admin and support. You may need HR support to recruit your staff, to motivate them, to train them, maybe in things beyond the project. So those will be costs again. The facilities and utilities, rent, you'll find institutions have to pay for electricity and water, maybe grounds upkeep, security. Staff want to work in a place where they are sure that their security is guaranteed. All those cost money and would fall under indirect costs. As an institution, you are required to have governance structure. Of course, good governance structure would cost in terms of seating allowances for board, the travel, the accommodation. We will also need to do audits. These are a legal requirement by the government. It could also be a requirement by the donor. They also cost money. And since the grant you're doing is going to be within the organization, if audit is a consideration, then you then need to be able to, the project needs to bear its burden of the portion for the audit fees. Of course, there are also other costs like legal fees. Should there be anything, even a legal issue coming out of your project, where would such an item be funded from? So you see, indirect costs are important. You don't want to be wondering where do we get lawyers' fees for? Maybe you are sued while doing the project. So these costs are costs you can actually justify to the donors. They know about it, but I think the politics, they still try to fund as little as possible. And part of it is maybe it's because of history they've had, because it's a place you can remain with money at the end of the project. These other things, the ones I mentioned, number 1 to 4, the donor will require 100% accountability. If it is staff time, they can ask for timesheets, they can ask for pay slips, and they want to make sure that you utilize that money towards personnel. The same thing with direct program costs. But for indirect cost, if it's a rate, say like they're giving a rate of 20% and you end up spending 10%, that 10%, you can keep it as an institution and as a surplus and use it maybe for other things that are not related to the project. So the donor tries to make sure that whatever they are giving you will not give you such a room, because once they agree on a rate, they will have to pay that rate, even though you end up spending less than that. So if a donor gives you 0%, you may decide to try and cost everything. You get an allocation criteria for everything and charge the project, so that at the end of the day, you're able to recover all your costs related to running the project. If they're giving you low percentage, you may just want to explore just a few items going above the line. You allocate some, you leave others. If they're giving you if they're not giving you adequate, again, you can decide for items like equipment. When you could have used office vehicles, you can decide to hire them, to hire, say, like taxis and such. That way, we'll be able to charge 100% of those costs and not be left with an overhead that you're carrying as an organization on behalf of the project. So I think I'm in my last two slides. The other budget considerations. Yeah, some of them, budget, when you're doing a budget, you should realize that a budget is a representation of number of activities. So there's a way activities follow one another. And as you do it, you should do it in a way that there's a smooth progression, because any time wasted is money. Say like you recruit and then you have the people in place, you've not thought about training, and then you train and then you take another break to do pilot. If you plan all this before you recruit so that the process is smooth, you find your cost will be lower. If you don't do that, you may find yourself having additional costs that you're not budgeted for. And that might end up being a cost to the institution rather than to the project. Some requirements by the donor, like reporting requirements, might drive your cost beyond the normal. Say like if they require monthly reporting, they require quarterly reporting. That means whatever things that you could do once at the end of the year, you're having to do them over and over again, and they require time. So if a donor insists on monthly reporting, quarterly reporting, you also have to ensure that those times are captured and paid for. Essentially, try as much as possible to avoid this regular many times reporting, because they do amount to micromanagement, but donors sometimes use this to ensure that they reduce their risks. They're able to see what you're doing on a continuous basis. If it has to be that way, make sure that you budget for those. Then consider also the what we call budget warrants that are permitted. So generally, the donor would allow you 10 to 15% overspending on a certain line, but you have to save on another line to be able to do this. Those are things that you should be wary of as you're doing the budget, as you're implementing the project, because they would give you flexibilities that may be necessary later on. Again, where there are restrictions, budget with this in mind, that if a donor just funds economy, then you can only give economy rates. If they're not paying for certain destinations, then make sure those destinations are not included in your budgeting. The same thing with carriers. They may want just their own carriers. Budget with their carriers in mind. If you have to buy from their own country, make sure that you budget with that in mind. If they require branding, make sure that you also budget for branding. You've asked us for branding, then you should be able to bear that cost. Other budget considerations, appreciate things like cost escalation. When you're thinking about, when you're budgeting staff time, you know that staff they expect an increase of the salary over time. So budget with that in mind. And donors would allow a modest inflation adjustment as long as you can justify it, maybe through data you can get from relevant offices that follow on that compute inflation adjustment and such. That gives inflation information. If they require an audit, make sure that you also cost it in the budget. Let it be their cost, not your cost. And some would require cost share, so you have to think about it. What's your contribution to the project? They may be willing to do 80%. What would constitute your 20%? It's possible for you to come up with such. Maybe it could be your executive office. You're saying your CEO is answerable to this project, but we've not costed that office. It could be overhead recovery. Our actual overhead maybe is 20%, but you're only giving us 15%. So you cost that 5%. It could be another donor who is funding the same activity. They allow those kind of items as your cost share. Also, consider other unexpected issues or risks. Donors will not normally allow you to have a miscellaneous amount, but there are ways to build this into your project. If you expect to do, say, you're using food stuff and you need them for 20 days, it's possible for you to justify 22 or 24. And then you work towards, if anything happens, yes, there will be the 4 days that you can be able to use to cover that eventuality. If you are using vehicles, for example, you may not want to go for maybe for tuk-tuk. We call them these rickshaws. The simplest kind of transport you can get, or say motorcycles. You can decide, let me put 4-wheel drives, maybe because of the terrain. But when it comes to implementing, and you find the cost may be higher, you may decide to use vans, which is cheaper. Those are ways you can work around taking care of the unexpected issues. Yeah, you build them within the units and the rates. You remember the example of a hotel meeting that I had, where I said you can go to Hilton at $200 a night. You can decide when you're implementing, the $200 would take me to a deficit, where I can choose a lower cost hotel and I go to a $50 one. Those are flexibility that you can inbuild in your budget. Then some donors will require budget notes, so make them be as informative as possible, not generic. The idea should be let the donor know that this cost has to be paid. You cannot cut me. I can give an example. If cutting a budget item means the quality of the work will be compromised, telling a donor that has a lot of weight, because now they don't want to be part of a project whose quality is compromised. So those kind of things. We've used that a lot in APHRC, where a donor wants to reduce the number of days, and you tell them, now if you go beyond this level of staff cannot do this. We have to go to a lower level of staff to accommodate your budget, and they don't want that. Then make sure that your assumptions are correct and you can back them up. This should be my last slide. So when you're doing the budget, make sure that your rates, the rates you give are based on competitive process. Because when it comes to, if you are competing with other applicants, you want to be sure that the cost you're giving is what the market really is giving, so that you don't overprice yourself. You should consider cost of sourcing for items early enough. Yes, the ticket from Nairobi to Kampala may be $300, but it depends on when you buy it. The plan should be, as you're budgeting, you should be planning for that reasonable rate. But now it means when it comes to implementing, you have to avoid last-minute purchases. Yeah, planning efficiency, I mentioned about that. A series of activities following one another. Make sure that there are no inefficiency in between. Then donors will allow you to even spend more in case benefits exceed costs. So it's not always about the cheapest. Quality is a great determinant of costs. Also, you may also look at delivery time. Yes, something might be, you may quote something because you may quote a low amount because a supplier is willing to do to offer at a low amount, but delivery may take a long time. So that might not be the rate to use. Of course, reliability and past experience also help you know what kind of figures to put. Thank you. Back to you, Peter Rock.
Thank you, Duncan, for that quite informative session. You want to give an exercise, right?
The exercise is left with them to do.
Okay. So
yeah, then we'll be able to look at it later on in the day. There's a time set out. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, this is a time then for questions. So you can unmute and talk your question. I've been looking through the chat. There's been no questions so far or comments. So this session is for anyone who has a question, or you can put it either on the chat or you can unmute and ask your question. Thank you, Jabulile. You're saying it's a very informative presentation.
And also Duncan, Tim, a very good morning. Hello.
Good morning. I can hear you.
Good morning. Thank you so much on this presentation. It is so informative. As I was listening, I listened to mostly the part on how we deal with challenges, common challenges in level of effort estimation, that we should be careful on how we handle challenges, how we do omissions and all. My take was at times a donor would expect you to do omissions to the point where the integrity of the project would be, the integrity of the project will be compromised. But as we continue, Duncan, thank you so much that we need to be aware as researchers that as well can be a risk factor. That the last slide where you say should liaise with the donor, that the donor should pay for me or don't cut me, because however we do it, we don't have to compromise the integrity of the project. And above all, the importance of planning in time to appreciate all costs and to appreciate the philosophy of whosoever is interested in being a donor for that particular project. Thank you so much. It was a very informative session. I wish we could have another dry run session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The exercise will give you an opportunity to put most of this in action. So we'll see how it goes. Thanks.
Okay, any other question before we proceed to the next part of the presentation? Okay, thank you, Duncan. If there's no question, I want to give 3 minutes for people to stretch and to, just stand up and stretch, take it as a short health break. We reconvene in 3 minutes. That is at 11 exactly, for George to continue with the presentation where Duncan has left off. So kindly take 3 minutes and come back at 12. That is at 12, at 11. 11 for 11 CET, and of course 12 for East African time. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I hope we are back. Just to test if we are back, just unmute and say, I'm back.
I'm back.
Thank you. At least a few of us have responded. So I believe that we are back. So George, you're welcome to proceed. George, we can't hear you. Oh, sorry. Let me say for myself, I can't hear you. Let me see if other people can hear George. Can you hear George? Or can you hear me?
I can hear you, Peter Rock, but not George.
Okay. George, we still cannot hear you.
Maybe he could be on another channel.
Probably, but I would also want, okay, anyway. Yeah, George, I can't still hear you. Okay, so George is sorting his audio, and as he is sorting his audio, can I get a translator to translate Geraldina's comment on the chat? Even if it's to talk it out. Okay, I think I've managed to hack Geraldina's question. Yes, now we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, George. Can other people confirm that George can be heard?
Hello,
Let me
everyone.
get some other people. Hello. Let me just get a confirmation that other people can hear you. Can you hear George, everyone else?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, Geraldina, we will sort your question after George's presentation. So I have gotten what you wanted to ask. So we'll handle that after George's presentation. George, welcome.
Okay. My name is George Gashanga. I'm the head of internal audit and risk management department at APHRC, a position I've held for the last 6 years or so. And I'm going to take you through the second part of this presentation that's to do with project risk management. And where I ask you to raise any points or clarification as we move on with the presentation. So we need to ask ourselves, what is project risk management and the importance of project risk management? And the definition of risk of what is a risk is found in ISO standard, that is 39000, which states that it's the uncertainty of an event occurring that could have impact on achievement of the project objectives. All these proposals that we are writing has a certain objective that you want to achieve, or the donor wants the organizations to achieve. So anything that can prevent you from achieving those objectives is what is called risk. And risk prevents us from delivering project the right quality. They hit us from delivering the project at cost, time, and compliance. The next issue is, why is importance of project risk management? Why is it important? It is important because you need to know the risk, what can make you not achieve the project objectives, what can make you fail to deliver the project in time, cost, quality, and in compliance with the existing laws and procedures or legal procedures. And maybe for what Duncan was taking us is that one budget is one of the way to address the risk of not addressing the budget within the cost. The issue of having the right staff to deliver the project can hinder us from achieving the project at quality. Time can be as a result of natural external factors, like most projects now that we have COVID-19 were not delivered on time because of external factors. And these factors which prevent us from delivering project in time or hindering the achievement of project objectives can either be internal or external, coming from the environment that we operate in. And since we have realized that it's important to understand the factors that can prevent you from achieving the objectives, it's good to make the risk management part of the project so that you're able to identify those factors quite early in the project life. And you have to understand that projects are unique and each project has its unique set of risk. Like a project, like when you're doing an implementation project is different from a research project that you have to collect data from. Maybe that has human subjects involved. And risk analysis will help us to identify the likelihood of a risk occurring and the impact of the risk on the project. What if the risk occurs, what will be the impact? Is it going to, for how long can it delay the project? Can it result from the project being abandoned? Those are the issues the analysis that you always carry out on project risk analysis. And if you look at project risk impact likelihood, for instance, at the inception stage, that's when you do the budget. That's where you do appointments that you match the skills with the project requirements, and you do maybe the feasibility study to see what is required or what the project is going to involve. Planning, at planning stage, maybe that's when you do detailed design, you do shading and start the issues of procurement or ensuring that you have the right tools to do the project. At the execution stage, most of the issues that at that stage is it's reporting on the project cost, quality check, developing the reports to the donors, and then at the closure, that's when you do project review to see whether it has achieved the objectives, what are the running points of those issues. And when now the project risk materialize these uncertainties, they have the impact of risk is that maybe you will not be able to achieve the right quality. There might be cost overruns, not delivering the project in time, or you might not be able to comply with either donor regulations, host country regulations, and so forth and so forth. Once you have identified your risk, then you have to assess to know which are the major risks. For instance, you don't pay attention to the risk whose impact is low and the likelihood is low because it will not have any impact to the achievement of the project objectives. However, for the risks such as which have high impact and maybe high likelihood, those are the areas which are marked red in our table. Those are the risks that your organization doesn't want to handle. And if it plans to handle them, it has to reduce that likelihood from high maybe to medium or to low, and the impact, and also reduce the impact of the risk from high to reduce it to medium or eventually to low. So the most risk averse organization, they like operating at low, where the impact of the risk that they face are low, and the likelihood is low. Once you identify the risk, you need now to move on and respond to the risk. And we are saying you are responding to risk by lowering the probability of the impact and the likelihood of the risk occurring. Or maybe you can plan to eliminate the risk, or you transfer the risk from the organization to someone else. This is where maybe in terms of project implementation, transferring the risk is where you might say that, yes, I'm the primary recipient of this funding, but I don't feel that I can have third parties or partners to do the project, to implement the project, because you don't want to face that risk. And we accept the risk or uncertainties at rate low. We adapt our activities and procedures by implementing controls for risk whose rating is low and medium. And we adopt contingency plans and responses for medium to high risk. And we avoid the risk or uncertainty when it's high, which was marked by the red part of the of the table below, of the table showing them. Then you have to ensure there is ownership of the risk, and that is risk ownership, monitoring, and control. And the responsibility for managing project risk lies with the project leader. And the project leader is now the one who should ensure that the risks are managed to level that to minimize to reduce the impact and their likelihood to low. Risk monitoring and control. You need, as you implement the project from planning, from project inception, project planning, project execution to project closure, you need to keep on identifying new risk and planning for their mitigations. And then for the existing risk, you need to continue tracking for them to ensure that their likelihood and their impact does not rise from low to medium to high. So our objective is always to ensure that the risk that we are facing have a rating of low. The next part is about project sustainability. And what we are going to cover is what is sustainability, how does it work, and who owns it? Sustainability, and as we are starting this discussion, someone mentioned about sustainability, and sustainability is the ability of the project or program to continue delivering benefits after the funding is over. And all donors will require in their proposals that you try to show how the project is sustainable. It's one of the requirements for various donors to do funding. And donors to want to see how the project and its impact will outlive their direct involvement in the project. Once the funding ends, are stakeholders going to derive benefits from this project? An example of sustainability, the project trains 50 new mothers in infant nutrition. After the training, these mothers will then share their knowledge with other mothers, children, and neighbors in their communities. Once there is this learning, because there is dissemination or learning, then we find that when you come back in this village 50 years, you find mothers practicing what they learned about infant nutrition. And for project to be sustainable, you need to plan for them. And one way of building capacity for sustainability, one is you create or expand or strengthen organization systems or processes, engage and empower community members and organization partners. You have to ensure that the community members or the stakeholders own the project. Otherwise, if they feel they are not engaged by the project, once the donor or the implementer leaves, then the project dies at that time. You need to provide financial resources to ensure that it's sustainable, and you need to develop sustainability plan. Then this sustainability plan needs to be developed at the project inception, because this is what the donor will. This can result to higher chances of your proposal getting funded. And in our case, an organization like APHRC, where we do research, we ensure sustainability by influencing the policy impact. Maybe do research maybe on education. We want the government to implement most of our findings so that even though when the donor comes 50 years, 10 years later, you see that these are the results of my work and it's still working. I am the one who funded these things, and the government implemented it, and it has an impact to the children who are in school even right now or sometimes in future. What should be included in sustainability plan? It needs to have objectives, what you want to achieve, milestone, how can you measure the impact, then timelines, for how long, what activities are needed, who is responsible. Then you need to plan for checking or assessing the progress, so that to ensure that you are achieving the milestones within the set timelines. That's the need for assessing the progress. why some projects are not sustainable. It's poor organization or project management. You did not plan for it. You lack the resources or funds or volunteers. If, for instance, you didn't budget for funds to train people to disseminate the findings. Lacked community support. The areas you implemented, you didn't involve the community. You need to gain community support at the inception. You need to tell them how is this project going to benefit them. They need to own up the project. And then you need organizational support. And that's the end of my presentation. Then I invite questions or observations. Over to you, Peter Locke.
Thank you. Thank you, George, for that presentation. So we are right. We have some time that we can take questions, about 10 minutes before we go for our break. And I would like to welcome people to ask questions. You can put them on the chat. But before we get new questions, I want to post this question to Duncan. It's on the chat and it has been sent by Geraldina Bonifacio from the Mozambican Parliament. The comment is the question. I would like to applaud the presentation. It was very informative or elucidative. I would like to know how we can manage or deal with a donor who wants to support a specific committee to the detriment of the whole Parliament, considering that certain work committees have less budget support while others have more support. Duncan, that's your question. If you have more questions, you can just put them on the chat or unmute and ask. Duncan? George, do you know if Duncan is close to his computer? Do you know? Let me try to call him.
Okay. But let me first answer.
Let me call him.
Being asked. Okay.
As I call him, I want you to be answering one question on the chat that is directed to you.
Yes, and the question leads, and how do you transfer a risk? Transferring a risk is where one, we agree that if you find that, for instance, you are working, maybe one of the risks you find that you are working in a hostile environment, like maybe in our situation is when you are asked to implement a project in a country like Somalia, which is war torn. So instead of us going there, and if we know that we have a health and safety risk, we look for partners within that country. That is transferring the risk. So instead of us going to implement, we transfer that risk, we engage a partner who is locally based there and who understands that environment. That's one way of transferring the risk. Or maybe the risk might be that you feel that you not deliver the project to the right quality because you don't have the right skills. Then you look for a partner who has the right skills. Or you can hire consultants. Those are you are transferring the risk that you not be able to deliver the project to the right quality. I believe I have given adequate examples. Jabulidi.
Thank you so much, George. I truly appreciate it. It was informative. Thank you for the explanation. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tim.
Okay, welcome.
George, would you like to handle
Peter
the
Locke?
question I had posed to Duncan? He's yes. George, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Would you like to take up that question that I had posed to Duncan? He's not available currently right now.
So where is the part of the question?
Okay, it's on the chat. I can read it for you. It was from Geraldina.
Yes.
I would like to know how we can manage or deal with a donor who wants to support a specific committee to the detriment of the whole Parliament, considering that certain work committees have less budget support while others have more support.
The best way to handle such a donor is to highlight the impact of maybe you show the impact of adding a specific committee and the development of the whole parliament. Let us be objective oriented. The donor wants to achieve this, but you have to explain to the donor that for us to achieve this objective, it's better for you show the risk of, or maybe you show a risk of the donor of adding a specific committee instead of the whole parliament, and the donor now will appreciate why he will achieve more benefit, or the project will be more sustainable if he funds the whole committee, the whole parliament instead of a subcommittee. That's the best approach to use. Geraldine, are you satisfied with my comment?
Yes, yes. Muito
Yes.
obrigado, George. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. I think Geraldina is satisfied. Do you have any other question or comment or observation?
Peter, Leo, may I come in?
Yes, Leo.
Thank you very much. I also posted on the chat. You can also transfer.
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
You can also transfer the risk by taking up insurance on the risk. For example, if the risk is loss related, if you may think that there's a risk of car theft and you lose your project car, you can insure the project car. I'm giving an example. There are other examples. You can insure laptops, you can insure your cell phones or your tablets. The one thing I wanted to pick George's brain on is two issues really. One of risk tolerance or risk appetite. How do you decide the risk tolerance or risk appetite of an institution? That's the first one, because that seems to be a very contentious issue, and it is very difficult. Perhaps as a risk practitioner, he can have some pointers. And then the second one is, oh, now it has escaped me. Maybe let him deal with that. I'll think about the second one. It just escaped my mind. My thought just went off.
Maybe, thank you, Sibada. The issue of risk appetite is a bit tricky for many organizations. For instance, if I first read our APHRC risk statement, our risk appetite statement, and it reads, the center takes a cautious approach towards taking risk and is only willing to accept a small negative impact to pursue strategic objectives. Hence, from this statement, you see that we have risk appetite for the strategic objectives and for tactical and operational objectives. For instance, we say that for strategic objective, we always say that anything that can result to more than 10% loss of our income, which would translate to around, not 5%, which would translate about $1 million, that one we don't touch. When it comes down to the project, we cascade that downward. So if a project is worth 500,000, we do 5%, and it comes to 25,000. So in a certain project, we are not going to take any risk that can result into a loss of 25,000 USD. In this case, you look at something like the example you have given about if a vehicle, for our vehicles, then that's the need that we don't want to risk our vehicles. So what we do is we take an insurance cover because it can result to higher or more losses. The setting of risk appetite is quite subjective, and it depends from organization to organization. It might be based on your revenue, and there is no holistic way to how to set it. But in most organizations, we might determine that it's 5% or 10% of your annual turnover. Then you cascade that downwards to the project level. Over to you, Sibada.
No, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Leo. There's something you had that had escaped your mind. Has it come back?
No, not yet. I think perhaps it was related to risk appetite. I think it was a related issue to risk appetite. But
Okay.
if it comes back, maybe later on I'll post it on the chat.
All right. Thank you, Leo Sibanda, and thank you, George, also for answering that question. So, yeah, Geraldina, we know that you had some microphone problems. So we are on time, just like 2 minutes. Anyone who has a quick question before we go for our half an hour break? All right. George, did you want to say something? Okay.
No, I'm okay. We
right.
meet in the other session. We'll be looking at the presentations.
Okay. So thank you, everyone. We are going on a break for half an hour. I know right now it's about 11:30 or it's 11:29. So we are going for 31 minutes. We'll be back at 12 CAT time, and that means that we'll be back at 1 for the East African timers. So 30 minutes break, we come back, and once we come back, we'll have Jane Mangwana taking us through project evaluation and dissemination plan. Thank you, everyone. See you in 30 minutes time. Good afternoon.
Yes, I have no questions. I think the presentation was very good. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Great.
So we can assume that people have really understood. And is there anyone with a comment?
Thank you, Peter Rock.
Thank you, Ronald.
Peter Rock?
Yes.
Yes, sorry, sometimes I have to keep quiet because I think I talk too much. And I don't want to sound like that.
Okay, go ahead, Sibanda.
I want to thank our presenter, Jane, for very engaging presentation. And the take home for me is the key messaging. Because in evaluations, more often than not, you find these 30, 40, 50-page documents. And you read the document and you still come out without any take home or nuggets from it. So I think if evaluators could take that and have key messages that they want to communicate, I think that becomes very important. Normally they write with the assumption that everybody understands. And sometimes not everybody is as technical in evaluations as the evaluator. So it might be important to take that lesson and drive the key messages that you want to drive. I think I thank you. And also for the highlight of the infographic. Because an infographic actually can make you understand a complex document without you having to struggle through the complex document. As you read, it also creates an interest because you start to understand some of the key issues, key messages, and you want to look for why it is happening that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sibanda. Jane, do you have a comment?
No, you're welcome, Sibanda. Good to hear that. Yes.
Okay, so I want to read.
Yes, there's a question. Yes, Peter Rock, go ahead.
Yeah, it's
no,
me, Jairus. It's
yes,
me,
Jairus. Go ahead and then I'll come next. Yes.
Yeah. There is the info, what do you say, call that one? Info informatics? Is it informatics? Is it an app? Is it an application or is it an application? How do you come up with the what's the title of that one?
Infographic? Is the infographic?
Yes. Yeah, infographics. Is it an application? Is it an application?
So an infographic is one of the tools for knowledge translation that you can use to simplify your information to policymakers. It's like a fact sheet, but this one is really simplified because it just talks about the issue and what needs to be done around the issue. So it's really basic, synthesizes the information. Yeah.
Oh, it synthesizes the information. Eh?
Yeah, it simplifies the information that you want to communicate to your stakeholders. It could be the policymakers or even the funder. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, so it's one of the tools that you can use when you want to simplify your information. Remember, you have the policy brief or the fact sheet, but you can also use an infographic, and it's visual and relates to the issues that you're talking to.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Jane?
Yes, please.
Okay, I have a comment and a question on the chat. The comment is from Geraldina, which to me sounds like probably she'll tell us if it's a Portuguese proverb. It reads like a Portuguese proverb. When the information is clear, we should only sit down to listen. And Nasema, congratulations. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, the other question is from Agnes. She asks, can other stakeholders other than the funder evaluate a project?
Thank you for that question from Agnes. So Peter Rock, the people who are evaluating the project should be the implementer and not the funder. So the funder will be tasked, the implementing partner or the grantee is the one that will be carrying out the evaluation. However, they can reach out to other stakeholders through a process known as outcome harvesting. Outcome harvesting is whereby you can have questions and really use that with other stakeholders to find out if your project has made an impact. So you can have policymakers, you can have the beneficiaries, individuals who are directly affected by your intervention. But to answer Agnes's question is that the funder does not evaluate the project. The evaluation is done by the implementing partner in this case. Over.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you, Agnes. Any other question or comment? Going once, going twice, and going thrice. So, yeah, okay. You're welcome, Agnes. So, in the absence of any other question, comment, or observation, I want to thank everyone and thank you, Jane Mangwana, for taking us through this informative session on project evaluation and dissemination. We are adding to the knowledge that we have learned over the last 2 days, and it's just building up into a coherent whole, I would believe, for every one of us. And we have a few minutes to plan our next session, which is about group assignments and the presentations. So I would want to say at this point that we are going to take our health break, which would be, or which can otherwise be known as a lunch break, and combine it with our group assignment. I just want some confirmation whether the templates have been circulated to the participants. Ronald, has that been done?
Good afternoon, everyone. I've sent already the first slides, and I'll be sharing the templates as well as the second slides in a minute.
Okay. Thank you very much for that information. So I want to request for your permission for us to do exactly like what we did yesterday. And that means that we take people into their breakout rooms now, and then people within their breakout rooms will decide how they want to approach this. You can decide to start on the assignment first and then go for lunch later, or you can decide to go for lunch and come back for the presentation. But in any case, you have 2 hours. You have 1 hour for your lunch break, and you have another hour for your presentation, probably in a few minutes, because it's still not yet 1 p.m. So that is how I would want us to approach it. I don't know if anyone else has something else to either confirm or provide another way to do that. Or if you're in agreement, you can still say, yes, you're in agreement. Or is there anyone with another suggestion? Or should we go ahead with this suggestion?
Let's go ahead with that suggestion. It's understood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. So what we are going to do is we're going to go into our breakout rooms, and then you will have your presentation template sent to you shortly. And then within your break, just decide what you want to tackle first. So we will be back. This is 1 p.m. to 3. Yeah, we should be back at 3. Sorry, what time is it now? It is 12, if I'm not wrong, right? It is 12 p.m. CAT, so we come back. We take a 2 hours break. We come back at 3.
It's 1 CAT this side.
It's 1 CAT, yes, because it's going to 2 CAT. So it's 1 CAT, sorry. So then that means we come back at 3. Yes, so we come back at 3. Yes, for our presentations and feedback. So please take the 2 hours to take your lunch and also to handle your assignments. Ronald, would you mind taking us into our breakout rooms?
Not a problem. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. See you back at after 2 hours. Good afternoon and welcome back, everyone. I can see the breakout rooms have closed, and I believe we are all here. I noticed we had Christian. You were in the French group. Did you have anyone else with you? Is Christian here? Yes, Christian. Did you have anyone else with you in that group? Or Christian is not back. Can I be heard? Can someone confirm that they can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you, Leo. So, Christian, are you here? All right. Okay, I saw 3 groups. Ronald, probably you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I saw 3 groups. One was French, and there were 2 English groups. We didn't have a Portuguese group, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to find out whether Christian was able to do anything, because they were just alone in the French group, so that we can say that we are having 3 presentations, but I think Christian is not close to the computer. Okay. Oh yeah, I've seen. Yeah, what I want to find out
Rock, your
is
volume
whether he
is
was able
fairly
to
low. Peter
my
Rock?
volume is low. Yes.
Yeah, fairly low. If you could just raise a little.
Oh, yes, I can hear you. Is my volume better now?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. So is Christian going to present for that group? Find out and let me know. Okay. All right. So I think at this point, then we'll deal with the two groups. Let me do a check. Lisa? Lisa?
Yes, Peter Rock.
Check with Duncan if he's around.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yes. George and just a minute. George and Jen, are you around?
Yes, I'm around, Peter Rock. I'm around.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen. George, are you back to the session? Okay, so as we check on Duncan and George, we will okay, so George and Jen are around, so we'll still proceed. Let me have this. Yes, hello? Yes. We can try tomorrow morning before we go to the other session, that's fine. Okay, so for now, then we are going to have the two groups present, English 1 and English 2, and then we are going to give a peer feedback, and if the issues that the facilitators can clarify, then they will clarify. I want to start with English 1. Elizabeth, Andreas, and your group. Could we have someone present? Thank you, Christian. Merci. The English 1.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Peter Rock. This is Leo. I'm going to present for that group.
Okay, proceed, please.
Yes. Can Masinati project from her screen? Because I received a presentation, but it's still the template. So may I request her to project on the screen? While she's still doing that, thank you for the opportunity and also for the knowledge that we got from session 4 and session 5. The group looked at the problem that we were given of having to visit communities to ensure that children in remote areas returned to school. And this activity was to take place in September 2021. And we started deliberating, and we deliberated on what activities we would need to carry out in order to make sure that this project happened. We chose a region in the remote areas of Namibia, maybe informed by the fact that we had one of the participants from there and also familiar with the remote regions and also with the environment. So our activities entailed first meeting with the school headmaster to get a register of the number of children not attending school, because we needed to understand which children are missing school. And the inputs for that activity were travel costs, stationery, lunch or refreshments, sanitizers and masks, which are your COVID prevention materials. And the timeline for this activity was the first week of September. And then the second activity was organize the meetings with the community leaders and chiefs, and then engage the parents on the issue of sending students back to school. The inputs for this activity were flyers, information flyers for COVID-19 related information, and then travel costs, allowances for the team, project team members, refreshments, sanitizers, and masks. We also agreed that on our team we would also have social workers so that they could engage if there are challenges with the children returning to school, so that they can work with these children. The timeline for this activity was the second week of September. We can move to the next slide, please. The third, okay, thank you. Now, I think this one we actually fleshed out more in terms of the inputs that were needed, and I think it's actually enhancing our first slide, because we were looking at all the different costs. But then there was an activity of sensitizing parents. I think we engage the healthcare workers with parents and students. In other words, social health or health social workers would engage in this activity with parents and students in order to allay their fears of COVID-19 and also enable the children to return to school. This would, during the second week of September, by Wednesday, this activity is estimated to start. And then sensitize parents and students also on COVID-19. This work is in tandem with the engagement by social workers. This would take place by Thursday of the same week of the same second week of September. And then thirdly, we moved on to trying to quantify the costs. Can you move to the cost table, please? We assumed that we would be using our staff members, and this would take a duration of about 7 days. We would use 7 days, and then there would be car hire. The daily rate for car hire in Namibia is 150 Namibian dollars, and the duration would be 7 days, so the amount comes to 750. And that would be 5 units or 5 cars, because you need different teams, and with the travel protocols, you need people to travel in different cars, not to travel all in one car. And then the refreshments, there was an assumption that there is a limit of 100 people per meeting in line with the COVID protocols. And that would also be seven days. And per day we would spend about 200 Namibian dollars. And that amount comes to about 20,000, 200 per day per person, which comes to 20,000. And we assumed that we would use a catering company called B&B. We came up with the name. And then allowances for our staff members, 4 staff members for 7 days at 150 Namibian dollars each. That would give us 600. And then sanitizers, we in line with the COVID protocols, we were aware that we could not bring people to a gathering without sanitizing them and making sure that the meeting happens in a safe environment, as well as masks. You know, the rate for sanitizers is about 20 Rand a unit, and we estimated we would need about 12 of those. And then the rate per day for a disposable mask is about 5 Namibian dollars, and we would need about 100 units because we have a limit of 100 people per meeting. These are emergency masks in case some people came without a mask to the meeting. We don't want to exclude them. We want to engage them because the purpose is to have an engagement meeting with the communities. And that would cost us about 500 Namibian dollars. And then fuel at 13 Namibian dollars, 50 a liter. We would need about 200 liters of fuel, which gives us about 2,700 Nam dollars. And then also stationery to collect the information, gather the information, and write the notes and so on. We estimated that it would cost us about $800 with the rates and units given. And then accommodation for our staff members, we would need 10 for 7 days at 750. This would be about 7,500. Our total budget for this is 33,090 Namibian dollars. Thank you very much. And then when it came to the risks to the project, we identified five risks. One risk was an outbreak of COVID-19, which would mean that the area would not be visited, and therefore there would be a quarantine period which impacts the time of the project. The second risk would be lockdowns. If there is a lockdown, a national lockdown, and therefore a restriction on travel, then the project would also be impacted. And then crime in these remote areas was also identified as a risk. And then poor attendance, given the fear that the pupils are no longer attending school, there was a risk that there could be poor attendance at these meetings for fears of contracting the COVID-19. And then also the last risk was the COVID-19 shortage of COVID-19 prevention kits, given that the masks and sanitizers sometimes run out in the market. So that was also identified as a risk. We did not move to identifying the mitigations and also assessing the likelihood and impact of these risks for lack of time. And then there were sustainability measures that we needed to do. One of the factors that we considered for sustainability was a project ownership. If we start this and pupils return to school, the question was, how would it be sustainable going forward? The group felt that if the project, the communities owned the project as an intervention and would take forward the interventions that we start, this would actually provide some sustainability for the project. Then the second aspect was the continuous supply of COVID-19 prevention materials, because this would impact someone attending school. If they didn't have a mask, then they would not be able to go to school. So this was seen as if this continuous supply was available, then it was one of the issues that would actually positively impact the continuation of this project or sustainability of the project. The type of evaluation, we had a brief discussion, and the team agreed that it would initially have a formative evaluation. The formative evaluation, in order to understand the issues, and then this evaluation would give us some information and also give us some strategies to implement in the communities in order to maximize attendance at schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sibanda, for that presentation. At some point, I think the person was sharing. I lost the presentation. I couldn't see, but I could hear your presentation. It was well presented. Thank you for that great work you did. I think the part that you've not been able to complete, we still have some time tomorrow morning. We can complete that. Feedback from colleagues as far as that presentation is concerned. Thank you, Leo, and your teammates. You've done a great job. Feedback or clarifications or questions that you'd like to ask?
Peter Rock, may I come in?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Sibanda, for that presentation. I just wanted a clarification on the evaluation. You mentioned that your team would be looking at working with the formative evaluation. Would that mean then you would evaluate your project once it's already started implementation or at the beginning?
Thank you, Jane, for that question. The team felt that in order to effectively implement the project, it would be important to understand the factors at play that actually impact on children attending school. Therefore, a formative evaluation would provide this kind of information in order for us to implement. But we are not ruling out the midterm and end of project evaluation. I think it was at this time that we were kicked out of the breakout rooms and we did not exhaust this point completely. Thank you.
Thank you, Sibanda. I think what you meant is the design evaluation, which is normally done at the beginning of the project. That's fine. Yes. That's okay. All right. Thank you, and over.
Peter
Yes,
Rock,
George. Yes.
If I may add something to do with risk assessment.
Yeah, please continue.
I would like also to add something like that we are going to a remote village. For the success of this project, what can be a challenge is lack of cooperation from the host community, from that community. So you need to think how, for this community to give you information that my son is not going to school, you need to endear to them. Those are the issues that you need to arrange, especially to deal with the locals. Then this is a remote village, so you should also consider health and safety risks. Then we are dealing with children, so we need to get appropriate approvals with the relevant authorities. They have mentioned the compliance with COVID protocols, which is a plus, and then the adequacy of the budget, because being a remote area might add to escalation of costs. And one of the ways to mitigate some of these risks, especially given that it's a hostile work environment, you can involve locals, and with that we address the local of hostile community. If you involve the locals, they will be able to volunteer information to the locals more than to people from another region. So that's how you can also manage that risk. Over to you.
Thank you, George, for that. I hope the team has taken notes. Any other feedback?
I can come in where the budget is concerned.
Yes, Duncan.
Maybe thank Mr. Sibanda for a good presentation like that. The thinking around the activities that are involved is quite impressive. I like the thinking around it, how you've gone to the ground and seen what you need, and now gone ahead and started costing those items. That's the idea where budgeting is concerned. You really have to see yourself doing the work so that you don't miss on things that you should have thought about and included. So thanks for that. Maybe for value addition, when some of the things that you may need to consider, George has mentioned about if it is it is a remote place, maybe security may be a concern. So you may want to put a cost to that. Do you hire police? Do you hire the village men, elders who are respected there? And if you're going to do that, what would be the consideration? They might take their whole day or their whole week to be with you. So that then you may need to budget for the cost of security. The budget notes you explained well. When you're giving this budget to a funder, you may not be there to present it. Yes, there are opportunities sometimes that the donor gives you, but the document should be able to speak for itself. So it's good to put notes that this cost is going towards this and this and this. Some of the numbers there, like 100. Someone may ask, why are you limiting yourself to 100? You mentioned very well in your presentation, but you can put those comments to say we restricted this to 100 because of the COVID situation on the ground. The currency needs to be noted. Should you be asking that money in a different currency? If the donor is not the county, then you may need to convert that money to the currency of the donor. There's also the overhead consideration. If this activity is being funded by a donor, you may want to show that the other costs to do with the office, the issue of selecting these people, hiring the vehicles, may be done by somebody else who is not part of the team. So those are things that you may want to include an overhead for that. But if the county is the one that is funding, they may already have in place the support or support. They'll be able to support the team that's going out. Then there are two points of going out. That was September, which is when one of the term was beginning, and then the next one was January. So the budget speaks about September, but January, probably what you can do is to have another column to show these are the figures for September, and then these will be the figures for January. Some items might change because some groundwork was done in September. So going back in January might be easier, or it may be expanded given what you discovered in the September visit. So those are things that you may need to think about as you do the budget. Say the other things like even clothing. If there's going to be a lot of walking, you may consider: do we need to have boots or something for the people who are doing this work? When it's raining, umbrella, gumboots become handy, raincoats and such. So those are, of course, you know the kind of weather to expect in September, the kind of weather to expect in January, and budget accordingly. I'm just bringing this to just show how important it is for you to go to the ground and see how it looks. For the vehicle, you for example, for the vehicle, I've seen this error sometimes happen. You say you are maybe a group of 20 people and you decide you'll use 5 cars, 5 vans. And then you go to the ground and realize by the time you drop the last person, the day is over. And then you start picking them again. So those modalities can only be evident as you put yourself into the, what does it take to do it when you're in the ground? And then you're able to budget appropriately. Here you may need 4-wheel drives, like I don't know, I have not converted the currency you're using to know how sufficient that amount is, but you should have those considerations. If you're going for 4-wheel drive because it's a remote area, then the rate should be higher. Thank you. But you got the thinking. It's just with time, as you continue doing this, you get better. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Duncan.
much.
Yes, thank you for that detailed feedback. Can I just, from the person who was, is it Masonata? Just put the mathematics tab, the one that has the numbers. Just put it back, the presentation. I believe it was Masenate.
Excuse me, I should do what?
Just put back the presentation. I can't see it, or is it still on? I can't see the presentation.
Oh.
Just put it back and take it to where the budget is. Well, thank you. I just wanted to clarify whether the total amount column corresponds to the kind of what you really need. If, for example, you're talking about 7 days, just let's look at one line. Just clarify for me if there's an error or that's how you intended it to be. If you look at refreshments and the rate per day is 200, duration, I'm thinking it's 7 days, and you have the unit. So at 100, does that mean that you needed to multiply that by 7, or
Let me check first.
Yeah.
I'll correct it in my Excel spreadsheet.
So it's meant to be multiplied by the 7 days if the activity is taking 7 days, right?
Yes.
Yes, you're right, Peter Rock.
Okay, then it goes for every other.
For all of them, yes.
Yes, for all of them.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other feedback for this group? Going once?
To Peter Rock, we may ask if the group members have anything that maybe I missed out, which they may want to add.
Yes, group members, please, if you have something to add or comment on.
Mine is a question. We were not sure whether we should have added raincoats, umbrellas, because for some donors, these will be categorized as non-allowable costs. So my question is, when you are getting funding, should you ask beforehand which ones will be categorized as non-allowable costs, so that you are clear on what to budget for and what to avoid, and what to spend the money for? Because you might spend money on non-allowable costs and only to be told to refund the money. It was not part of the essentials.
For this kind of work, it clearly makes sense that you may need such kind of equipment. We in APHRC, when we are doing field work, we put those things, and part of it is because we are working in the slums, and the drainage condition there may not be as good. So those are things that are understandable. You just need to explain why invest in me, and this is not an overhead. It's really direct to the project. You are purchasing this for the purpose of the project, not to use it for any other work. And of course, things like gumboots and such, you also don't share. So it means it cannot be used. Cannot be used by the same person for other work, but cannot be shared, given to other people to do similar work. So it becomes quite integral to the project. Of course, when you're doing a grant application,
Someone speaking on the background, kindly mute.
I lost Duncan.
Peter Rock.
Is Duncan still talking?
There is someone other than Duncan. There is someone talking about accepting calendar request. Nonetheless, We don't have Duncan.
That's why I'm muting myself, but I'm wondering whether Duncan is still speaking because I can't hear him.
No, he's not speaking. He's actually.
Did he finish answering the question? Okay.
He's back. He's back.
Duncan, you finished, eh?
Yeah, finished. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other feedback? Any other feedback?
Yeah, that was question number here.
Pardon?
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, question number. That was question number here. I just want to thank the moderators for giving a positive feedback. Of course, I'm coming from this group. From this group, I just want to thank the moderators for giving a positive feedback and indicating areas where we can improve, like how we can include the other things like the security, things like the gumboots. So it is very engaging the way we have analyzed our group work. It is very engaging. I want to thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Jalosi. At least you have some more things to do and to think about during the next breakout tomorrow morning. So is there any further feedback to this group? Okay, now let's get the second group. Please present. Manuel et al. English too.
Hello.
Hi, Angela. Yes.
Well, we didn't do much with group 2. We didn't finish since we start with the last slide, which is slide 4 and slide 3. I'm not sure if you have to present this one or we have to continue when you do the full presentation.
So that slide 3 and 4 is about?
No, part of the template that was provided. So we looked at the
You've muted yourself, Frank-Held.
Sorry. We did the project evaluation and dissemination, which is slide 4. We also looked at risk management and sustainability, but we did not complete it. We were still to look at budgeting.
Okay.
So I'm now here to be advised.
Okay, I would suggest that you present what you have done because also at this point to also benefit from feedback that we have Jane in the meeting and also George, and I think those two that you have mentioned, you've done something about it even if you haven't completed. Just present what you've done, you'll get feedback on that, and then when we come back in the morning, we'll give you time to complete.
I will share the screen and Manuel and the colleagues will do the presentation. Thank you.
Okay.
Informer is there.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, you can see the screen.
Yes,
okay, then Manuel will do the presentation.
Informer will do the presentation.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to present. But as my colleague has mentioned, I think there was a bit of a challenge because the work, there's a gap in terms of work that should have been done yesterday, which was not done. Our group didn't meet. So that made it a challenge because it's a build on whatever we're supposed to do, supposed to be a build on what we've been doing. So we have the first day, but we don't have the second day information. So we touched a bit on trying to develop the objectives, I think, which are on a different slide. However, we scrounged with whatever we could do. And responding to the questions, there was a question on what type of evaluation we're going to do. I think looking at the project that we had talked about, we felt we had the statistics, we felt our project proposal was fine. So we felt there was no need to really undertake it because the designing, we had all stakeholders and they built on in terms of designing the problem, we were clear on that. So we felt there was no need for the design evaluation or the formative because we felt all the information was in place. So we felt the project is very short as well. So we went for a summative evaluation. And we felt the summative evaluation in terms of how are we going to undertake it. We felt to remove subjectivity, we felt would engage an external evaluator, of course, working very closely with the external evaluator so that we do not lose each other in terms of perspectives of the project and what we've achieved. And with that, the thinking around that was that we'd assess the level of success in relation to our outcomes. Our clearly stipulated outcomes listed we assuming we have them. The external evaluator would need to actually evaluate the project in relation to that so that the information that is generated can give birth to other activities that follow. And then in terms of the last activity, which was, I'm almost forgetting the question, sorry. We felt we're going to, how we're going to conduct the evaluation, I think was the question. Would be targeting internal and external, the dissemination, sorry. Would be targeting internal and external. We felt the project was being implemented maybe by a few individuals within our institution. However, there are key colleagues that we work with, and it would be important for them in one way or the other, maybe they would play this and that role. It would be important for them to know how the project that we've been implementing has unfolded, what we've achieved, and how we'd want to go forward. But however, key are also the stakeholders that we work with that are external in terms of giving them that particular information. So we asked ourselves the question, how are we going to disseminate the information that would come from the evaluation? One of our key platforms in terms of what would we identified how would disseminate the information is via media. But before we engage media, we felt we're going to meet with key stakeholders using a roundtable. It could be a roundtable meeting, it could be a workshop, but we share our findings, and we felt through such a platform, that platform would be more engaging, and feedback would come on board, various recommendations could actually come further from the dissemination and would get quite informative feedback. But related to the same is to make ourselves attractive, and also I think it's important to be known that there's something that you're doing. If anything, it's an opportunity also to brand yourselves for further funding. We felt would engage with media, and media in terms of mainstream media would work with television, print and electronic media, that is television and radio, as well as newspapers, but would also go with the modern media platforms in terms of the websites, in terms of using social media and things like that. But we also thought of, okay, to go to these platforms, you just don't go. How will we equip ourselves? What products are we going to have that would deliver at these various platforms? The workshop that we were talking about would need a well-documented report, but in a very summarized version in terms of what did we plan, where are we, what did we achieve, what were our challenges, something very simple that would engage our audience in terms of our stakeholders in a very short period, but also get feedback within that. That's for the roundtable. So we'd need a very clear presentation with less jargon, straight to the point, bring our stakeholders around the table. They're very busy. That's what we believe. So we would not want to have them seated for a very long time. The thinking is a good presentation would be good, But for the other platforms where we are actually sending out information, we felt our products would be maybe posters, flyers, and these posters and flyers would be very key. Picking out one idea that in terms of this is what we've achieved, this is what it means. Remember, we're talking about GBV, what were the communities? It would be good to have an infographic under these flyers. Case studies, remember we have women who have pictures that depict the community where we are working. What have the women said under GBV? Women being mostly affected by issues of GBV, but also men, pictorial, clear to the point, and that's the thinking that we had under the dissemination. So mainly our products would be flyers and posters. And these are the same that we would use for the social media, for the websites, you'd have those. But on website, we could go further to have human stories. Someone maybe would have a story of a woman talking about how she survived GBV and how our program actually helped her to come out of it. I think those were the ideas that were being thrown around. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ifoma, for that presentation. I welcome feedback from your team members as well as from the other colleagues. Manuel and Frank Hild, if you have something to add. Is that Jen?
Yes.
Please come. Go on.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much, Group 2, for that presentation on project evaluation and dissemination. I really like the fact that it shows that you've understood the task and you're up to it. One of the things that I want you to consider is, as you're doing your dissemination, define who your primary key target audiences are and your secondary target audiences. And I like the fact that you brought in the element of having the flyers and the posters to also incorporate the women at the community level in the GBV intervention. And also the fact that you're thinking of using human interest stories. Those are very important to the policymakers. So I think for me, what I would urge you to do is define your primary audiences, secondary audiences, and in whatever you do, remember, you need to ask yourself, what do you want your primary target audience to do with your information? What is your ask? That's very important, but well done and good job. Over.
Okay,
Thank you, Jane. Okay. Manuel and Franklin, do you have any feedback or something to add?
Yeah, nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay, then let's get feedback from the other groups. Help them to improve where probably you feel that they should, and then congratulate them where you feel they've done well. Yeah.
Thank you, Peter Rock.
Yes, Sibanda.
Thank you very much to Group 2. I think they've done well. They've really thought about the different aspects of their evaluation as well as the dissemination. I like the fact that they are even using different dissemination types for different audiences, and I think that really for me was very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sibanda. More feedback? Okay, seems like we do not have more feedback. So I have two things to say. One is that I'm going to hand over shortly to Lisa to proceed with just the last short section of the day. But I want to congratulate all the three groups for the work that you have done. And just to inform that tomorrow we will have some time to give to the fifth group to present what they have done. And we also will give time to the other two groups to be able to complete, at least for the first group, to work on the feedback and see what else they can add, and for the second group to complete the budgeting part of it. It will be very important to complete that, and also in this feedback, to get feedback for that, because when you now get down to do the task, you will remember that there's a template that you did somewhere, and you go back to that template and you have a place to start off. You don't reinvent the wheel, you just start straight from that template, and you see the ideas that you brought out, and those are the same ideas that you're going to use in the actual presentation. So Lisa, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Peter Rock.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen shortly. Peter Rock, please confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. We've come to the end of a long day. We've been giving you a lot of information. We've had different sessions, and now we'd like to hear from you. I think you've spent the whole day listening to us, but now it's an opportunity for us to also hear from you on the content that we have shared with you today. That's on the budgeting, the risk management, and the mitigation in it, as well as the evaluations and dissemination plan. At this point, I'd like to request us to go to a fresh browser and type www.menti.com. If you can go to a fresh browser and type www.menti.com. Menti is MENTI.com. While there, please use the code 80312340. Can I get a confirmation that we are somewhere?
Yes, I'm in the first question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So the first question reads, what went on well today? There were various sessions that we were taken through that I've just mentioned. Please tell us how you think those sessions went. Please share your thoughts. Give us your feedback. At least let us know that we are communicating. We are all on the same page through your response. So that is www.menti.com and use the code 80312340. I'm glad I have seen one response. Second one, thank you very much. Let me just add and say that the responses received are quite anonymous.
Code, please. Code again.
The code is 80312340. Are you able to see the question from your browser?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Please go ahead and respond. So far, we have received 4 responses. 6. Thank you. Yesterday, we were able to receive 14 responses. That is good. Today I see we still have a good number of participants in the room, in the virtual room. So hopefully we should be able to surpass the response rate received yesterday. We are now at 6. Peter Rock, please help me to read out what's in the chat, if at all it needs my attention. We are at 6. George did mention what risk management was, the uncertainty of an event occurring that could have an impact on the achievement of your project objectives. You've had an opportunity to proceed to your different groups. You've been able to see the practicality of all this information and the projects, the impact it might have, the risk that you have to consider, and how to mitigate the same. We have received 8 responses. Keep them coming, keep them coming. Is there anyone who might be experiencing a challenge in getting to www.menti.com?
Lisa, there's only one feedback in the chat.
Okay, please go on. Please read it.
In my opinion, everything went on well.
Okay, thank you. We'll take that into consideration and make the count go to 10. We have 33 participants with about 10 being facilitators together with the interpreters. So that leaves us with about 20 or so participants. So we are waiting to hear from the 11 participants. I hope my background noise is not disruptive.
That's also feedback. Peter Rock, there's something in the chat.
Yes. So this was the best day and with informative and interactive sessions. That's from Jabulile Malaza.
Wow. That is so nice to hear. And we are only halfway. Imagine what it will be for the next couple of days. Yes.
So that's up to 12. We can allow a few more.
You can allow, yeah. Let me know if you want me to move to the next slide, to the next question. Jen did mention about the different types of evaluations, evaluation criteria to use, evaluation of the project cycle, and even how to prepare an evaluation plan. So really it was quite informative. And from what has just been read out, I think that is also a confirmation of the same from one participant. What are the rest saying? Was it the same experience for you too? Please let us know by answering the question, what went on well today? Did you enjoy your group work? How was the session for you? Were the team members engaging? we've been having a challenge of not everyone going into the groups. Was it different today? What do you think? Please let us know. From your own perspective, what do you think went on well today? We're at 11 responses. Do I move on to the next question? Are we comfortable?
Lisa, I think you should move to the next.
I think we can move. Yeah.
Okay.
Because
the next question is, what can we improve on? There's always room for improvement. Please let us know. What do you think we can improve on? How can we make the sessions better tomorrow and the coming days? Please let us know by filling in. Thank you very much. We have one response on that. Thank you, thank you. We had 11 responses in the previous slide. So at least we should be able to get more or less same number on this question. You've invested so much time and resources to be here. At least at the end of the day, you should be able to see the value in it. If you are not seeing, please let us know so that we know how we can improve on it, how we can make it better now and even in future for other sessions that we might have. Thank you for the 5 responses already received. Thank you, thank you. More responses, yes. We are at 8. Let's see, everyone who participated in the previous question, can we write something on what we can improve on? If it is okay, also, please let us know. If not, also, please go ahead and let us know. This is also one way of us evaluating our sessions. We've learned the importance of evaluation in an earlier session today. So we practice what we teach. Nine responses received, thank you. Can we get an additional 2, 3 more? And then I hand it over back to you, Peter Rock. Thank you very much for all who have taken time to answer these 2 questions. Your feedback is very, very important to us. We take it very seriously. One or 2 more. Anyone who'd like for more time? Or should we wrap this up? Please let me know. Do you want more time?
Please, let's wrap up, please.
Okay, thank you, thank you. All right, over to you, Peter Rock. Peter Rock or Hesbon?
Yes, Lisa.
Okay, I'm handing it over back to you.
Okay. Hey.
Would you like me to go to the first slide or?
Thank you, Lisa. Hesbon? Okay, sorry. Lisa.
Yes, please.
I'm here.
Yes, just go. Thank you, Hesbon. Lisa, just go to the first slide.
There we go.
Okay, so thank you, everyone. Just for the next 1 or 2 minutes, thank you for giving your feedback on how it has been today. We've been there, we've seen this, a lot of appreciation of the aspects of budgeting, evaluation, and risk management. And yeah, it was today, people are saying it's better in terms of presentations and the group discussions. I think things have gone on better as we have continued. Keep up the good work. Clear and engaging. More time was allocated to group work or presentations went on to. I think all this is quite positive of what went on well. Will Lisa move to the next slide? We see if there's anything we can work on. Yeah, I know, I'm sure this one, I think it has come up again. So we are going to do that. We tried today, we added 30 minutes, but it still seems that it was not enough. Tomorrow, we'll add more time for group work so that we can get more done. So that's a promise. Tomorrow, we'll move some things and make time. So when we come in the morning, I'll let you know how the program will be. We'll create time for everything that needs to be done for tomorrow. More question time after each presentation, which I think we have given. I think what we are lacking here is more people to engage after, the presentations. But time is there because I'm pausing even for a few seconds to allow anyone who has feedback to give. So I think that's fine. What we need to do now is to engage more, give feedback to group members, give feedback to other groups so that they can improve on their presentations and their templates. The presentations were sent on time. That is very good. Yes, 1 hour is not enough. Yes, we will add that tomorrow. The following day, we'll see how we can increase that. I think this workshop is more for participants and they should have more interest. Yes, when it comes to group work, we call it peer review because sometimes, and peer feedback, which is very important. When you're in the same category of people and you're doing the same thing, it's very important to give each other feedback on how people are going on and, giving each other and saying, this is how we approached our issue. Could you try to approach your issue this way? We exchange ideas because we understand that all of us here are people that have experience in one way or another in various ways. So we are not just here to learn, but we are here to learn from each other. And then I think if I go to the same for chat, everything has been perfect for me. Thank you. The sessions are precise. The only snag is network interruptions. Sorry for those that had network interactions. And yeah, this was the best day and with informative and interactive sessions. So thank you very much for your feedback. We'll work on that time and increase more time tomorrow, particularly in the morning for group work, so that we can give the people time to complete what they didn't complete. So now I want to release you at this point, and I want to ask, Lisa, you can stop presenting, and I want to ask if anyone has something that they want to say. Hesbon, this was, I was calling you earlier, but now you are not required earlier. Now is when you're required if you have something that you'd want to say, and not just Hesbon. If there's anyone else who has something to say before we close, you are welcome.
All right, thank you very much, Peter. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, I just wanted to thank everyone for our contribution today. We have really improved, and most of the things that we pointed out yesterday, we have worked on them, except one that we still have room for improvement, that is with respect to time. So good job, everyone. Let's continue like that, and we look forward to even a more productive day tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicholas, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Peter Rock. I was not able to join the meeting today and part of yesterday. Got a lot of engagements outside this meeting. But on behalf of the team organizing this, especially PEC, I joined fairly late and joined English group 2. I found them struggling with a bit of issues here and there, especially on risk. What I want to say is that we really appreciate the contribution of the presenters of today. In a very short time that I've joined this meeting, felt that the day was really good. And I think the participants are picking up the pace. They're appreciating the issues we are discussing. And we hope this goes a long way to improve their processes in fundraising. Because really, majority of the participants here are attached to parliaments. Other than the vote heads in the exchequer given in the national budgets, there's always room to think beyond that and look for funds to support programs of parliaments, especially around capacity, especially engaging communities and citizens. I think this is coming out really very good. And it's my feeling that by Monday, we may have a clear roadmap towards fundraising. And I really appreciate the presenters and the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicholas. Jen?
Thank you, Peter Rock. I just want to take this opportunity to thank the participants for their engagement during and even after the presentations. And I also want to appreciate the fact that they were able to really do some of the tasks. We don't take it for granted, and we appreciate when you are really making an effort. And we are hoping that beyond this, you will go further, because that will be very useful to you when you're writing your proposals. Thank you, and over.
Thank you very much, Jane and Nicholas, for that feedback, and Hesbon as well. I would like to request the coordinating team to just remain behind for 5 minutes. But for everyone else, we appreciate your presence. We appreciate you being here. We'll meet again tomorrow, 9 a.m. CAT time. And I want to wish you a fantastic evening. You can leave at your pleasure, so that I'm left with only the coordinating group. Thank you, everyone. You can unmute and say bye as you leave.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye. See you tomorrow.
Goodbye. All right.